Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today in search of Mexico's whale sharks. And we are here today with Astrid Frisch Jordan. And Astrid trained as a biologist at Mexico's National University and has been leading natural history expeditions throughout Mexico since 1991. For years, she has introduced our guests to her country's most remarkable wildlife and wild places, from monarch butterfly sanctuaries in central Mexico to sea turtle nesting sites in the south and humpback whales of Banderas Bay. Her knowledge and passion as a naturalist are unsurpassed, and her warmth and good nature make her one of our most popular expedition leaders. When she's not working in the field, she is actively involved in humpback whale conservation and research in her home city of Puerto Vallarta. And we're really happy to have her here with us today. So Astrid, over to you.
Thank you, Lee, for such a nice presentation, and thanks for all of you for joining us on this nice webinar. So as Lee was saying, I'm going to talk about this magnificent creature, the whale shark, the biggest fish in the oceans, but also even it's so big, we know very little about it. There's still a lot of mysteries about this nice creature. Well, first to start, the whale shark, I would like to say it's a tropical fish and has a very wide distribution. In the map you see on your screen, all the red area is where we can find the whale shark. So basically almost all over the tropical oceans except for the Mediterranean Sea. Even with this wide distribution, we know very little about them. We have to think that sharks evolved over 350 million of years ago, so way before humans appeared in the planet. So it's amazing that such a pre-Hispanic creature, so big, with such an amazing, huge habitat, we know so little about them. Just to give dimensions to how big a whale shark is, the biggest whale sharks can get to 60 feet long, but in average they're around 30, but still very, very big. They're also very long life animals. They live between 60 to 100 years old, and we estimate that they get sexually mature when they reach the 30 years old. But of course these are estimations because we don't know much for certain about these great creatures. So as I was saying, sharks and whale sharks are quite prehistoric, and as you can see in this screen, they don't look as prehistoric, but they are as prehistoric as the basking shark on the left corner of your screen, which is also a filtering shark, but from template areas. Then the other funny looking creature on your right hand side, that is the megamouth shark that lives in very deep waters, also very cold waters. And then the other filtering shark, our friend, the gentle whale shark that is in the bottom, and it's the tropical whale shark. So these three are the filtering sharks that are more related among them. But of course, nurse sharks are also kind of related to our whale sharks. So whale sharks are famous because of their teeth, of course. So whale sharks, basking sharks, megamouth sharks, they still have their teeth because they are sharks, but they don't use them anymore. So basically the shark teeth almost disappeared. So where you see the arrow, and maybe you can see my pointer, those things that look grayish, a little bit bright, these are 300 files of teeth rows that they still have there, but they are minute teeth. They don't use them anymore, so they are about to disappear. So basically the sharks, whale sharks, don't use their teeth anymore. They're just filtering creatures. They get all this plankton into their mouth. They also have a nice spiracle, I'm pointing here, just behind the eye, that also helps them do a nice suction of the water. And then the slide on the photograph on your right-hand side, you can see the gills. So basically what they have is modified gills that look more like rakes that help them filter the food before going through their throat. So the gills, besides helping for breathing in the whale sharks, are also helping for feeding, avoiding things that they don't want to swallow to go through their throat. So what do the whale sharks eat? Usually, like the whales, the big whale shark will eat tiny, tiny creatures. Basically, they feed on zooplankton. So this zooplankton can be fish eggs, one of their favorites. Also, of course, krill and crustaceans, little diatoms. So everything between the zooplankton and the phytoplankton, but basically mostly the zooplankton. And even sometimes they will go for coral spawning in the tropics for feeding. Well, so now let's see. You know probably that there are many different places where you can find whale sharks for go and see them. So one of the most famous places is Ningaloo in Australia. Belize is another place where you can find whale sharks a little bit more easily, but definitely this area of Mexico is unique because of its aggregation. So the map in the bottom, we have Mexico, and then the map in the top, we have close-up of the Yucatan Peninsula, where this concentration of whale sharks happens. So, well, that's Holbox. Holbox is this kind of like sandbar. We call it an island because it's really separated from mainland because of just by a tiny, tiny break there in the right-hand side. But basically, Holbox is this beautiful sandbar. It's a very long island, around 30 miles long, but it's only around 1.5 miles wide. So only a small part of this island is inhabited by humans, and from here is a great spot to go watching for this huge concentration of sharks. So let's try to understand why the sharks get so concentrated in this area. So back a little bit to the maps again. So in the summer is when this big aggregation of whale sharks happens. And the reason is in the summer is basically because of the ocean currents. During the summer, the Atlantic current is trying to come into the Gulf of Mexico, as shown in the slide on the left side. So basically, when these currents are coming very, very fast, try to enter the Gulf of Mexico, they find this barrier between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. So finally, they find this very narrow passage, but besides finding a narrow passage, if you look at the map on the right-hand side, you can tell that the Mexican Yucatan Peninsula has a huge continental platform. So basically, this platform is also an obstacle for the water to come in. So we have all this water trying to flow in to the Gulf of Mexico. So what is happening is that all the nutrients from the bottom are being carried to the top. So basically, this creates what we call surgens, or blossom of food. So these surgens are going to provide a lot of plankton. And because of all that big amount of plankton is why the whale sharks concentrate in this area. They're coming for the food. That's the reason we find so many sharks. So to give you a closest idea of why I mean by a lot of sharks in an area, this is a photograph of an aerial survey took from 400 feet above the sea level from a biplane. And probably you guess, all those spots over there, yes, 75 whale sharks in just one shot. Our biggest concentration of whale sharks in this area was registered in 2008, and it was 420 whale sharks in only 18 square kilometers. It's really amazing. Whale sharks everywhere. So the concentration of whale sharks is directly has to do with the concentration of food. If we have a lot of food concentrated, the sharks are going to be very concentrated. If the food is dispersed, the whale sharks are going to be a little bit more dispersed. But what is for certain is that there's always a lot of food in this area in the summer. Between more or less May to September is when this blooming starts happening, and that's when all these whale sharks start arriving to this place. Another very special thing about the concentration of whale sharks in the Holbox area is that in other places like in Australia or in Belize, whale sharks are known to segregate by sizes and also by sex. So that means that we have all the females on one area, the males on another area, juveniles in one area, adults in another. So they don't mix. But in this Holbox concentration, they all mix together. So basically, we have females, males, young ones, adults, really big animals or small animals. The average size of whale sharks that we see in this area is around 26 feet long, but we have seen animals 60 feet long. And usually the ratio of sharks we see in the area is 2 males per 1 female. And well, males and females are very hard to tell apart. Besides for the claspers, the males have 2 claspers under their anal fins. And the females, when they are pregnant, they look a little bit chubby. So this is another very amazing fact about whale sharks. Probably you know that sharks can be ovoviviparous or they can be oviparous. So it was not until 1995 that it was discovered to the world that whale sharks were ovoviviparous. That means that whale sharks don't lay eggs. Basically, they produce the eggs, but they keep them inside their body, and then the babies are born from the mom alive. So the way we learned that, and the reason we learned it until 1995, is because we know really nothing about the reproduction of the whale sharks, of where do they mate, where do they hatch, what happens with the baby. We are clueless about that. But in 1995, a Taiwanese fisherman caught a pregnant whale shark, and he discovered all these embryos inside of her, and he was nice enough to report to the researchers. So since then, we know that whale sharks are ovoviviparous, and they can hold around 300 embryos, because that's what this female had inside of her, and the ratio of sex was 1 to 1. So we only have the information of one whale shark. Doesn't mean it's exactly the same, but we at least know the average and what happens when the whale sharks are producing their eggs and having their hatchlings. Well, and even they are very, very big, of course, they still have predators. The top predators of the ocean are the orcas, so occasionally whale sharks, adult whale sharks, can suffer attacks from killer whales, but also can suffer attacks from great white sharks. But basically, when they are grown up, these will be their only predators, and of course, this is not a big threat for the population. When they are younger, when they're smaller, of course, there are more dangers around, so marlin, sailfish, any other sharks can also eat them, but we know very little about that also. Well, so now let me tell you a little bit more about how this great encounter with the Mexican whale sharks takes place. So we go to this magic place of Holbox, and basically we take these tiny boats that are called panga boats. They are approximately 23 to 26 feet long. They have a canopy. And the reason we use these small boats is basically because they are great to maneuver around the whale sharks. They have very good visibility, and they are great to maneuver around the whale sharks. The boats we use have a permit by the Mexican Wildlife Ministry to go watching for whale sharks or snorkeling for whale sharks, and we usually have a maximum of 8 persons per boat plus the local guides. So basically the idea is we have 2 persons at a time going snorkeling with the whale sharks. Only 2 persons and 1 local guide will jump into the water with the whale sharks at a time. And trust me, this is a life-changing experience. Basically, the whale sharks are so big, so going into the water with this giant and at the same time gentle creature is a life-changing experience. So we are not allowed to touch the sharks. We don't want to disrupt them. We don't want to bother them. They are feeding, so we want them to keep doing their own thing. And they really don't mind us at all if we don't get on their way or if we don't touch them. They know we are there. They are aware of that. They look at you with their tiny eyeballs, and they just keep feeding if you don't touch them or really get in front of them. So basically, the idea is we have to stay away from them approximately 9 feet. But this will vary a lot depending on the movements of the shark and also of the water visibility. So sometimes we are farther away from 9 feet, sometimes we are a little bit closer, and we have to be very careful to really not to touch them. So even 2 persons go at a time in the water while the other persons are waiting on board. It's a great opportunity to enjoy the panorama, to see the whale sharks, to see what's going around you, how many sharks are around you. Great photos like the one on the right corner can be taken from the boat. So it's not just like waiting for your turn to go in the water again. It's really amazing to stay in the boat and see the water, the whale sharks from the boat is also part of the experience. As you notice in these photographs, some persons are wearing wetsuits and some others are wearing snorkeling life jackets. So one of the regulations is that everybody should wear a life jacket to go snorkeling with the sharks. But if you have your own wetsuit and you bring it, then you are released from using the life jacket. And sometimes it depends also with which you feel more comfortable with. So sometimes you go in the water. Every day is different. It's really amazing. We are always depending on the ocean conditions. So let's say that if it's very windy or if we have a tropical storm, the plankton will go to the bottom of the ocean, and so the whale sharks, because they are just following the plankton. So we need for a nice calm day, sunny day, for the plankton to come up and for the whale sharks to come up and for us to make it easier to find them. So this place in Holbox is unique because it's the only place in the world where you can really guarantee that you're going to see these whale sharks, and that is because the concentration is so big. What are we going to see? Of course, it varies all the time. That's what is very fun about working with wildlife and about working in the ocean. You never know what surprises you might find. Sometimes you see just only one shark. Sometimes you are surrounded by 10 sharks around you. Sometimes you're almost in between 2 sharks, like the picture on the bottom left. So it changes all the time. Sometimes the water is a little bit more murky with the plankton. Sometimes it's a little bit more clear. Sometimes we can see other amazing creatures like the giant manta rays. Giant manta rays, of course, take advantage also of this great abundance of plankton, and they are also filtering creatures. So sometimes we are lucky to also find giant manta rays in the same area or nearby where the whale sharks are. And these animals are also fantastic. They can length between 9 to 12 feet just from tip of the wing to tip of the wing. Of course, there are many other creatures that depend on this amount of food and the surgence of plankton. So this area is very famous for their lobsters. We also have green sea turtles, and summer is also their nesting season. Occasionally, we are also lucky to find the cow nose or golden rays migration. These tiny rays in the bottom are basically, they do a migration on the Gulf of Mexico, around the Gulf of Mexico. So usually through the summer, they're passing around Holbox area. So sometimes we are able also to see these beautiful golden rays. And of course, dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins are quite common around this area. So sometimes in our boat rides, we can see them. The location of the whale sharks changes all the time, changes per day, changes basically per season. It's very different what happened last year to the year before that one. But usually our boat rides to find the whale shark take us around an hour and a half each way to the location where the whale sharks are. But on the way, we can sometimes be lucky and spot other creatures like the dolphins and the sea turtles, flying fish, and many things that keep us entertained on the way. But we also do other activities in this great place of Holbox. And on one of the afternoons in Holbox, we take our boat to go birding to see ocean birds mainly. And we visit this beautiful place that we call the bird of the island bird. And you can see we have a nice observatory. And sometimes we're very lucky to see the flamingos. Flamingos are quite common in this area because this is one of the most important feeding grounds in Mexico. And actually they nest in a very nearby area called Celestun, but their nesting season is during the winter. So sometimes we see cormorants, frigate birds, brown booby birds, brown pelicans, flamingos, herons, egrets. So lots of these coastal and ocean birds, and it's really beautiful to be able to see them from this little observatory without disrupting them. Usually the time of our tours in July is also the nesting season for the olivaceous cormorants. Another great activity we do on our last visit, or last afternoon in the island, we go exploring the island on what we call the Holbox Way, which is by golf carts. Because in Holbox, cars are not allowed. So basically, or you have a motorcycle, a bicycle, or a golf cart. So it's really fun going around on the island, discovering different places of the island by golf cart. And of course, we close the afternoon with a really nice sundowner to say goodbye, farewell to Holbox Island. But besides Holbox and the whale sharks, well, this is our hotel where we stay in Holbox. This is the Villas Paraiso Hotel. So of course all the hotels here are front ocean beach hotels, because that's what it's all over the island, just beach all over the place. It has a nice pool, but the ocean is amazingly great and beautiful. It's almost like having your own huge pool out there. And the central photo, you can see more or less how the rooms are distributed. We have, there are 2 rooms per one cottage of this. So there's one room on the 11th floor and another room on the top floor. And there are lovely gardens all over the rooms in this hotel, and everything is walking distance. You can go walking distance to the town or just enjoy the area around the hotel. But it's a tiny, lovely island to retreat and enjoy while going and see the whale sharks. But the other things we do on this trip, because besides the whale shark, the Yucatan Peninsula has very special characteristics, and one of them is the underwater systems, the cenotes. The Yucatan Peninsula has the biggest fresh underwater system in the world, and that is connected. And these are basically systems of caves that go underground. We call cenotes. It's a Mayan word that means the sacred hole. And it was a sacred area for the Mayans because it was the water, and well, still is the water, the fresh water provision for all the Yucatan Peninsula. So we go and visit one of these beautiful cenotes, and it's kind of like dipping into this great underwater river with a kind of like semi-closed cave with stalactite and stalagmite formations. So it's a very fresh, delicious water coming out from the hot and humid. Because something I have not mentioned yet is that this trip takes place in the summer in July, which for us in Mexico is our hot and humid season of the year. It's our rainy season, so of course in the tropics it's hot and humid, and there's nothing more delicious than dipping into a fresh cenote in the middle of the day. We also stopped for lunch at the home of some Mayans, and they have the proud to take care of this amazing kapok or ceiba tree that is 700 years old. So it's quite impressive to be able to eat our box lunch just under the shade of this sacred kapok tree. And well, this is our hotel that we use when we come into Cancun and fly out on your way home. So basically the airport is Cancun, that has great location, great connections to all international airports, but we kind of like try to escape the bus and kind of like all the touristy of Cancun, and we go to this tiny place of Bahia Petempiche that is located just 20 minutes from the airport of Cancun. So it has a great location. It's a beautiful beach. It's a really nice hotel with, of course, great facilities. But what is really very important also for us is that the hotel is located right in front of the Mesoamerican Reef. If you are aware of the reefs, the biggest barrier reef is the Australian reef, and the second biggest reef in the world is the Mesoamerican Reef that starts right in Puerto Morelos in front of our hotel and runs all the way to Belize. So on our last day before heading back home, basically we go snorkeling at this national park and enjoy the coral reefs and all these colorful fishes. This reef is almost famous for its great varieties of corals, a lot of hard corals and a lot of soft corals, very different species. So it's quite nice to go snorkeling in this Mesoamerican reef. Also something that I strongly recommend, if you have never been in the Yucatan Peninsula before, I definitely recommend you to try to come a day earlier or to stay 1 or 2 more days after the trip and go and explore a little bit of the Mayan ruins. It's just a 3 hours drive to Chichen Itza, one of the most famous Mayan archaeological sites, one of the 7 new wonders of the world. It's also Uxmal, Cobá, Tulum, this amazing archaeological site just by the ocean. So there's a lot to see also. So if you haven't been to this area of Mexico before, I strongly recommend to try to stay for a couple of extra days before or after your trip. So well, my friends, this is from my part now about the whale sharks. Hope you enjoyed, and well, let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Astrid. Thank you very much. We do have some questions here that I would like to present to you that our audience has submitted. We have a question about how many travelers you would expect. What's the minimum and maximum amount of people that might be on a trip?
Well, the maximum amount of people we take on a trip is 15 persons. And when we have over 7 persons on the trip, we always have 2 expedition leaders. So basically, it's almost like having 2 groups of 7 or 1 group of 7, 1 group of 8 maximum, because we use vans for our transportation, and the boats fit maximum 8 persons per boat. So basically, we stay at the same hotel, we eat lunch and dinners together, but the most important activities most of the time we are split in 2 groups of 7 or 7 and 8. That will be the maximum. And as you know, in natural habitat we never cancel, so if we open a date and there's only 2 persons booked for that date, we will go with 2 because we never cancel our departures.
Okay, great, thank you. And how long is the trip?
The trip is 6 days. So basically, the first day is our arrival date, where people is coming from different places. So we use the first day to gather. We meet around 6 o'clock in the afternoon for a welcome briefing and welcome dinner, to meet all our travel mates and learn more about the details of the expedition. And then and we stay in this place in Bahia Petén Beach, and then the next 3 days we're going to stay in Holbox with 2 days outings to see the whale sharks, and then the last day we return to this Hotel Azul Beach and go snorkeling at the reef. And the 6th day, the last day of our trip, is the day to go back home.
Okay, thank you. Now, when you are out on the water, are there orcas in vicinity of the area where you would be snorkeling?
No, not at all. Unfortunately, no. I would love to see the orcas, but no. This area, there are no predators, big predators around where the whale sharks are feeding, and it's actually not very deep waters, because remember the map I showed you at the beginning with the Yucatan continental platform. So most of the time we are within the platform. So sometimes even we have traveled for over an hour, the water is not more than 20 feet deep. So it's really not very shallow, not very deep, and no orcas or no other types of sharks in the area.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And how experienced do you need to be in scuba diving?
No experience at all in scuba diving. This is kind of funny. You just need to be used to wear a mask and a snorkel. And if you have never snorkeled before, it's not a problem. Sometimes we practice the previous afternoon at the pool. But basically, you need to be able to swim and to be a little bit because this is more like swimming and snorkeling at the same time. These giant creatures swim quite fast. So the idea is that you have to keep up with the sharks. So sometimes you really have to kick and use your arms and swim, and in order to keep up with them and see them for a little bit longer. So basically you just have to be a good swimmer. You're in the ocean even if you wear a life jacket, and be able to make a good swim, let's say for at least 5 minutes, 3 minutes non-stop.
Okay, and so do you actually scuba dive at all, or is this exclusively snorkeling?
It's only snorkeling, and actually scuba diving is not allowed, because one of the things the sharks don't like is for you to go under them. And so we don't scuba. It's not necessary because the sharks are moving, so it also works better to do the snorkeling, but it's also not allowed.
All right, thank you. And just to reconfirm, did you say that it was 2 days spent with the whale sharks on this trip?
Yes, we have 2 days going out with the whale sharks.
Okay. And is the water temperature warm enough that you would not need to wear a wetsuit?
Yes, it's actually quite warm and nice. You definitely don't. We just use the wetsuit because of the floating, that extra floating that gives you, but provides. But it's not cold at all. It's quite warm.
All right, that's great. Thank you. So it looks like I'm down to just one more question for you here, and it is about birding. Are there many birds seen from the boat?
Well, they're basically mostly from the boat. We see mostly ocean birds. So occasionally we'll see some seagulls, but the most predominant birds are brown pelicans, magnificent frigate birds, olivaceous cormorants, of course the flamingos, and close to the coastline, of course, herons and egrets. Occasionally we can even see the spoonbills, but those are the sorts of most common birds in the area.
All right, thank you. And we have had a couple more questions come in, so I want to go ahead and make sure we get those answered. Would you please remind us, when would you say the best time of year would be to take this trip?
Well, we schedule our departures in the month of July, because usually July is the peak of the season. So anytime in July is usually very good, because the whale shark season opens around at the beginning of June and closes at the end of August. So July is right in the middle. So it's basically any date is great. We just depend on the good weather.
All right, perfect. And are you allowed to hike around the island, or is it protected?
Well, you cannot really go very far because there's these water entrances, because it's almost like a mangrove island. So we have this sandbar, and then it's broken by different openings of the ocean. So you really cannot go very far. And there's all the mangrove where you cannot walk on the mangrove. So there's really, you can walk around, but you can walk around, let's say, on the habited area of the island. There's no much place to go after that.
Okay. And then what about cultural experiences? Is it possible to visit local markets on this trip?
No, not much. We will see some of little towns, Mayan towns that are very local and very authentic, while we drive into Holbox, mostly more than an out from Holbox. But not much of that cultural experience in this part of the trip. Holbox is fairly more a new settlement, to say it in a way. So no local markets of things that we will visit. But in the island of Holbox, of course, they have beautiful crafts and things all related to the whale sharks.
All right, thank you. And the accommodations, the hotel rooms, are those air conditioned?
Yes, of course they are. Sorry I didn't mention that before, but definitely there's no way to be without air conditioning in the tropical stay area in the summer. So yes, air conditioning in our rooms in both facilities.
Okay. And then for extending the trip, if someone wanted to visit Tulum at the end of the trip, is this nearby?
Yeah, Tulum is only like 45 minutes to an hour drive, and it's very easy if you want to extend your stay, let's say to go and visit the ruins or even to go scuba diving. The concierge at the hotel, Azul, can help you do a reservation, and also at Natural Habitat, we can help you book your extra nights. And so it's really very easy and very simple.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much. All right, well, I think we will stop there. So let me turn it back over to you, Astrid, for closing comments.
Okay, well, I just want to say that this trip is really unique. If you like the ocean, this is something you should not miss, because it's really amazing. It's amazing ocean, beautiful colors, and of course these whale sharks are majestic. So it's really a very nice experience. And one of the things that for me in particular makes this experience so special is being so close to such a big creature that doesn't care about you. So we don't disrupt them, they don't look at you, they don't care about you, and that's really very rare to have that experience with an animal that big. So that's what I like. So hope you will join us. Thank you.
And my thanks as well. We appreciate having all of you here with us, and we will make sure that all of you receive a link to the replay so that you can enjoy this and share it again with friends and family if you'd like. And we look forward to welcoming you on our next webinar, which is scheduled for November 15th. We will be sending a link out to all of you for your review in case you'd like to join us. So this will conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.